Hello, and welcome to Broken Little Spine. On this channel, we champion new ideas, critique classical and contemporary literature, and we try our best to tackle many of the issues we face in our society today. If this is your first time here, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, it is time for our feature presentation. Hello, and welcome to Broken Little Spine, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm not going to be doing any book reviews per se. I'm really going to be recapping of all the books that I read during the 2020 year. It has been a crazy year, and it's been a year that has given me more time to read because we haven't been at work, obviously, and most people, I believe, have been social distancing and have been kind of shut out from their own businesses and stuff. So without the ability to go out and enjoy ourselves, we have to sit at home and find new ways to entertain ourselves. And the movies that I had been watching just were getting kind of old and redundant. And so I kind of wanted to just do something different with my mind, do something different. And so I decided to pick up reading. I always was a reader. I've always been big into like reading books and stuff, but not at the volume that I was reading now. I mean, this year really, I think I've turned the stride. Is that how that phrase goes? I turn a new page. I can't. Anyway, I'm trying to sound fancy. Anyway, today I'm going to be talking about the best books that I've read in 2020. I'm going to be doing fiction because I did read a lot of nonfiction as well. But these are specifically books that I personally have not read. And I stumbled upon a lot of these works and I was interested in reading it or just kind of revisiting a lot of stuff from high school. So I guess we can always start off with the obvious, William Shakespeare. I always knew about Shakespeare, but I never truly read Shakespeare. And over the pandemic or the last few months, I've read Hamlet, I've read Othello, I've read King Lear, and I read Macbeth. All the best ones, the top four ones, or in my opinion. And I thought that they were great. I've never truly read Shakespeare. And just the way that he can, tell a story, the way that he creates characters and puts them in these ironic and tragic situations, it made it very entertaining read. I think the best of all of them. I like Macbeth and also like King Lear. I watched the performances online, a lot of the old performances with Ian McKellen or Laurence Olivier. Just watching their performances of these Shakespearean plays, and it's been amazing. I also like Othello. I think that I'm going to probably try to do a little segment on my page where I kind of break down Shakespeare, but I don't want to go too deep into Shakespeare because I think that most people know Shakespeare. But yeah, eventually I'm going to go into Shakespeare, and you can see my copy of Othello that I love to read. Truly enjoyed reading Shakespeare this year. So that's been a fun one for me. Well, I guess I could leave him up in the background because he is the king. The next I had read, I always heard about The Raisin in the Sun, but I never truly read it. Or I probably read it once before, but I never remembered the story. But I reread The Raisin in the Sun, and I enjoyed this story. It was a very interesting story about a family. Let me see, when was it? I want to make sure I get it back. I want to say the 1950s. It was written in the 50s, but it was about an African-American family growing up and just kind of like wanting more out of life than what they were given. The mother of the family, not the mother, was it the mother or the father? I think I'm mixing up. I read a lot of August Wilson too, so I think I'm mixing up the stories. I want to say the mother. I think either the mother or the father died. The patriarch or the matriarch of the family died, and they left some money behind for the family. And everybody's trying to figure out what they want to do with the family. I think it was the father. The grandfather died. I think that was it. Great story about a family and what people will do when they're desperate to get out of a very tough situation. I truly enjoyed A Raisin in the Sun. Next, I read Truest by Sam Shepard. This was a play written about two brothers, and one brother is an aspiring screenwriter, and the other brother is an ex-convict. And it's really this interesting banter between the two of how like the screenwriter is pretty much dissing his brother because he's a convict, and the convict's trying to one up his brother. And he has this producer that's supposed to be coming, and this producer is supposed to like help the screenwriter brother out with the film, but then the convict brother kind of takes over, and when he takes over, he kind of like they're both stealing each other's shine. So it's an interesting critique on brotherhood. It's an interesting critique on just like desperation and stuff, and how we've looked down on people And it's really just about not judging a book by its cover. So that's another one that I'm going to probably review in the future. Truly enjoyed Sam Shepard's prose. I enjoyed this play, and I'm going to try to read the rest of these. I'm going to try to read The Buried Child next, and we'll go on. This isn't fiction. This should be in my nonfiction one that I'm going to do next. But the narrative life of Frederick Douglass was a great biography of Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was a former slave, but turned into a black intellectual. During his time, he rubbed elbows with many of the elites during his time, and it was a powerful story. Oh, he's an abolitionist. Excuse me. Former slave, a passionate abolitionist, a brilliant writer, and a newspaper editor. And it pretty much just talked about Frederick Douglass's life and the abuse that he suffered under slavery. But the great thing about it was, despite all the stuff that was thrown his way, despite all the hate and racism and the brutality of the situations that he lived under, he still continued to just push himself forward because he believed that there was more. So this is a great read. This might show up in my nonfictions of 2020. So now we're going to go into a novel that I read. This was the controversial novel. It is Disgrace by J.M. Coates. This is an interesting story about a university professor that sleeps with his student. And once he sleeps with his student, it's like the disgrace that happens when he sleeps with one of his students. It's a very interesting read. Obviously, it's a story that came out before the Me Too movement. It is something that is very controversial. And most people probably won't like it because the way it deals with rape and sexual assault in this book. But I actually thought it was very interesting to be in the main character's head. I can't remember what this guy's name was. I want to call him Jim, but I doubt its name is Jim. But our main protagonist is pretty much just like the disgrace that he has and his views on society, and just, it actually is a roller coaster of a ride. I mean, even midway through, I mean, you think that it's really just going to be about the disgrace that he has, but it's more of like the disgrace of the sexual assault of the student. It would be sexual assault because she didn't really consent to it, but it really wasn't written. It's written from the male's perspective. So if there was a feminist critique of this for modern day audiences, which this really is somewhat modern day, I mean, 20 years ago, it's still kind of modern, but I think the critique would be, you would see her perspective of what was going on. So we really see his perspective and how he views women and how he sleeps with her and how he views her. There are moments when he talks about how she was limp and stuff like that when he was sleeping with her. She wasn't really aroused by it, and I imagine he wasn't the most attractive looking guy. But this is a very good read. I'm gonna probably, a lot of these books that I'm talking about, I'm gonna critique them in the future. But this is a very, very great read. It's a novel by J.M. Coates, Disgrace, and it's white. That's why it's kind of messing up with the color. And then the rest of them are just a bunch of stage plays that I read. So I read Arthur Miller's The Crucible. It's about the Salem witch trials, and it's about John Proctor and what he will do for his wife and for his integrity, how he won't bow to the mob. It's a great story. So everybody's always big on cancel culture, and I know this is kind of conflating the story, but it's kind of like, if you're interested in cancel culture, you might like the story of John Proctor, because it's a great story about like how you stand by your morals and principles, even if people don't agree with you. And I don't want to spoil the end. I almost did. This is another one that I'll probably critique next year. I read Antigone by Sophocles. This is a great story about a strong female lead. This is a story about a woman who has principles and morals and wants to stick to the traditions of honoring her brother, but the new king does not believe that, and he doesn't want to honor her brother because he believes that her brother was a traitor. And we see the story of Antigone and how she goes to depths with the king to honor her brother. Great story. And then the rest of these are just the Mamet. I stumbled upon David Mamet, which was great. Earlier this year, I was going to try to get into more stage plays. Let me see if I can do this right. More stage plays. And I read Buffalo Soldier by David Mamet, and I was hooked. And I went crazy with David Mamet. And he has such a unique style, a unique prose with his writing. It's Aaron Sorkin like, which Aaron Sorkin was inspired, obviously, by David Mamet. It's that same kind of Tarantino. It's heavy dialogue. It's very witty. It's very snappy. It's very intellectualized, but what's the word I'm looking for? What makes that? It's so captivating that it makes you want to like you root for these characters. So, Sexual Perversity in Chicago was just about. It's a story. It's David Mamet's take on love in the early 70s. This wasn't one of the best ones, but it was interesting. And I probably just threw it in there because it was just recently what I just recently read. Glenn Ross. This is one of his masterpieces. This is pretty much about a cutthroat sales business and what people will do to get ahead in the sales business. This is a great one. I'm gonna put it up there because I want people to go check it out. Glenn Ross. You have Speed the Plow, which kind of goes back to that same critique on the movie industry and how people are willing to do whatever they have to get ahead in the movie industry. I didn't like Speed the Plow that much, not as much as I like Glenn Ross. But it was still it was Mamet. I don't know. I won't say Mametian. I don't think that's a word, but you can tell it's David Mamet written into it. And the other one, which I don't think most people care for, but this is one that's probably going to be. This is another one on the same levels of Disgrace that would certainly certainly get canceled today. Speed the Plow too. And these aren't bad because they're not good stories. I'm somebody who I enjoy the story for what they are. I try not to project today's standard on a classical story. But Oleana is a story about there's no sexual assault, but it's just like a critique on that type of professor-student relationship and what entwines in it. There's blackmail, there's misunderstanding, there's misinterpreting signals. And I think it was I read Buffalo Soldier and I liked it. And then I stumbled upon Oleana and I remembered the name David Mamet. Did I read Buffalo Soldier this year? I keep saying I did. I might have read it. I might have read Buffalo Soldier before the pandemic. And then I was like, oh, I saw David Mamet's name and I just bought his book. And Oleana, it was like I said, it is a story about the professor and student's relationship. So that's really what I've been up to in 2020. Obviously, me and a bunch of other people have probably been doing similar things, but those are the books I read. I know I didn't read anything that was more current or more up to date, but a lot of times I might read it and it might not stick with me. Not to say that there isn't a lot of great books out there, a lot of great fiction. A lot of more recent stuff is nonfiction that I've read, the Jordan Petersons, the Ta-Nehisi Coates out there in the world, those intellectuals that I read. And I'll make that for my next video. But that's, so far, those are the best or the top 10 books that I read in 2020, fiction books. And leave a comment in the comment section if you checked out any of these books, if you enjoyed any of this stuff. Peace.